Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Wrapping up good old Wyatt story.
Wyatt Earp, Mustache Pete.
Mustache Wyatt.
Right.
As you guys know, he did his early life. We did the OK Corral.
All right.
We did the Vendetta Ride, and now we're ending his life.
Okay.
As we know, the Vendetta Ride lasted for over a year, during which the old Earp posse, along with Doc and others, eliminated Old Man Clanton, that's disputable, Billy Clanton, Frank McGlory, Tom McGlory, Frank Stillwell, Indian Charlie, Dixie Gray, Florentino Cruz, Johnny Barnes, Jim Crane, Harry Head,
right.
Bill Leonard, Joe Hill, Luther King, Charlie Snow, Billy Lang, Zwing Hunt, Billy Grounds, and Hank Swillen. After Wyatt saw Doc for the final time, his health continued to get worse. As a realist, Doc was not one to believe in miraculous cures, but hoping that the Yampa hot springs and sulfur vapors might improve his health, he headed for Glenwood Springs, Colorado, May 1887.
It'll help.
Well, registering at the fashionable Hotel Glenwood, he grew steadily worse, spending his last 57 days in bed at the hotel, and delirious 14 of them. November 8th, 1887, Doc awoke, clear-eyed, asked for a glass of whiskey. Nurse gave it to him, he swigged it down, and looked at his bare feet and said, "This is funny." Then he died.
Oh.
He always figured he'd be killed with his boots on.
Oh.
Not in bed.
Damn. Hell of a way to go.
Hell of a way to go.
San Diego Union printed a report from the San Francisco Call on the 9th of July, 1882. It reported that Virgil Earp was in San Francisco receiving treatment for his shattered arm, and that Wyatt was expected to arrive from Colorado that very day. Wyatt, he took a job managing a horse stable in Santa Rosa. Earp, he developed a reputation as a sportsman as well as a gambler. He was reputed to own a 6-horse stable in San Fran, although it was learned later that the horses released.
Following Wyatt's return to San Fran, Josephine began using the name Josephine Earp. Josephine was Earp's common-law wife for 46 years until he died, obviously. Wyatt and Josie remained in San Fran for about 9 months until early 1883. They headed for Silverton, Colorado, where silver and gold mining were flourishing. It was the first of many mining camps and boom towns in which they lived, still trying to get rich. However, he still owned a house in Tombstone with his former common-law wife, Maddie, who had waited for him in Colton where his parents and Virgil were living. He said, "I ain't going back." During the summer of 82, she sent him a letter saying she wanted a divorce. She had met a gambler from Arizona, and he had asked her to marry him. He said, "I'll buy you all the laudanum you need, baby."
Ooh.
Earp did not believe in divorce, and therefore refused. But she ran away with the gambler anyway.
Right.
The gambler abandoned her in Arizona, so she moved to Pinal City, Arizona, where she resumed life as a prostitute. She struggled with addictions and committed suicide by opium poisoning July 3rd, 1888.
Wow. Earp's friend, Luke Short, part owner of a Long Branch saloon in Dodge City. But the mayor tried to run him out of business and out of town during the Dodge City War. Short appealed to Masterson, and Masterson contacted Earp on the 31st of May, 1883. Earp and Josephine went with Masterson, Johnny Millsap, Shotgun John Collins, Texas Jack Vermillion, and Johnny Green to Dodge City to help Short out. And they were sworn in as deputies by Constable Dave Merrill when they arrived in town. The town council offered a compromise to allow Short 10 days to get his affairs in order, but Earp refused to compromise. Short saloon reopened, and the so-called Dodge City War ended without a shot being fired.
Look at you, Earp.
Look at that shit. Wow.
Well, then Earp arrived in Eagle City, Idaho, 1884, along with Josephine, his brothers Warren and James's wife, Bessie. Eagle City, another new boom town, growing from the discovery of gold, silver, and lead in the Coeur d'Alene area. It is now a ghost town in Shoshone County, Idaho. Earp joined the crowd looking for gold in the Murray Eagle Mining District, and they paid $2,250 for a 50-feet diameter white circus, in which they opened a dance hall and saloon called the White Elephant.
Fantastic. Earp arrived in Eagle City, Idaho, 1884, along with Josephine. Earp was named deputy sheriff in that area when he arrived, including newly incorporated Kootenai County, Idaho, which was disputing jurisdiction of Eagle City with the Shoshone County. There were a considerable number of disagreements over mining claims and property rights, which Earp had a part in. 28th of March, miner named Bill Buzzard. He was constructing a building when Earp's partner Jack Enright tried to stop him. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Enright claimed that the building was on part of his property. Two men began to argue. Buzzard fired several shots at Enright with his Winchester. Then allies of both sides took defensive positions behind snowbanks and began shooting at one another.
Oh, shit.
Earp and his brother James, they stepped in the middle of the fray and helped peacefully resolve the dispute before anyone was seriously hurt. Look at this guy just stepping in the line of fire. Around April 1885, Earp reportedly used his badge to join a band of claim jumpers in Embry Camp, later renamed Chouale, Washington. Within 6 months, their substantial stake had run dry, and the Earps left the Murray Eagle District once again on the road again. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere.
Just lay it down, will ya? The Coeur d'Alene mining venture died out by 1887, so Earp and Josephine went to San Diego, where the railroad was about to arrive and a real estate boom was underway.
All right.
Stayed for about 4 years, living most of the time in the Brooklyn Hotel. Earp speculated in San Diego's booming real estate market, and he bought 4 saloons and gambling halls between 1887 and around 1896, all in the respectable part of town. Okay. Why didn't you just stay there then? Right. He offered 21 games, including faro, blackjack, poker, keno, pedro, and monte. At the height of the boom, he made up to $1,000 a night in profit. He also owned the Oyster Bar located in the first granite face building in San Diego, the 4-story Lewis Bank building at 837 Fifth Avenue,
all right,
which was one of the more popular saloons in the Stingaree district. One of the reasons it drew a good crowd was the Golden Poppy brothel upstairs, owned by Madame Cora. Each room was painted a different color, such as emerald green, summer yellow, ruby red. Each prostitute was required to dress in matching garments. So, look at that. I'm feeling a little yellow tonight.
Right. Earp. He was a last-minute choice as referee for a boxing match, 2nd December, 1896, which the promoters billed as the heavyweight championship of the world, when Bob Fitzsimmons was set to fight Tom Sharkey at Mechanics Pavilion in San Fran. Earp, he had refereed 30 or so matches in his early days, though none under the Marquis of Queensberry rules, but under the older and more liberal London Price ring.
Probably got away with a lot more in that one.
Right, some thin-ass gloves.
Right, my pardon, maybe not even none.
Right, the fight may have been the most anticipated fight on American soil that very year. Fitzsimmons favored to win, and the public and even civic officials placed bets on the outcome.
Fitzsimmons did indeed dominate Sharkey throughout the fight, and he hit Sharkey with his famed solar plexus punch in the 8th round, an uppercut under the heart that could render a man temporarily helpless.
Wow.
Then at Fitzsimmons' next punch, Sharkey dropped, clutched his groin, rolled on the canvas, screaming foul.
Wow.
Earp stopped the bout, ruling that Fitzsimmons had hit Sharkey below the belt, but virtually no one witnessed the punch.
Or was willing to say.
Earp awarded the fight to Sharkey, whom attendants carried out as limp as a rag.
Oh, shit.
The 15,000 fans in attendance greeted his decision with loud boos and catcalls. You piece of fucking shit. You know how much money you just lost?
Damn. It was widely believed that no foul had occurred and that Earp had bet on Sharkey. Several doctors verified afterward that Sharkey had been hit hard below the belt, but the public had bet heavily on Fitzsimmons, and they were livid at the outcome. Fitzsimmons went to court to overturn Earp's decision. Newspaper accounts, testimony over the next 2 weeks revealed a conspiracy among the boxing promoters to fix the fight's outcome.
Did it?
Newspapers across the United States republished the stories from San Fran papers and looked for local angles.
December 14th, 1896, San Francisco Call quoted a story from the New York Journal by Alfred H. Lewis, who accused the Earp brothers of being stage robbers. Oh, wow. And Earp was parodied in editorial caricatures by newspapers across the country. Stories about the fight and Earp's contested decision were distributed nationwide to a public that knew little of Wyatt Earp prior to that time. So now, instead of being the famous outlaw gunslinger guy, he's now known for being a piece of shit referee.
Oh, wow. 17th of December, Judge Sanderson finally ruled that the prize fighting was illegal in San Francisco, and the courts would not determine who was the winner. Sharkey retained the purse, but the decision provided no vindication for Earp. Until the fight, Earp had been a minor figure, known regionally in California and Arizona. Afterward, he was known coast to coast. Boxing.
A minor figure. Bullshit.
That boxing match left a smear on his public character, which followed him until the day he died, and even afterwards, because we're talking about it now. 8 years later, Dr. B. Brooks Lee was accused of treating Sharkey to make it appear that he had been fouled by Fitzsimmons. Damn, they were really pissed off. And Lee admitted that this was true. I fixed Sharkey up to look as if he had been fouled, he confessed. I got $1,000 for my part in the affair.
Hey, fuck it. Well, Earp had a long-standing interest in boxing and horse racing, and he refereed boxing matches in San Diego, Tijuana, and San Bernardino.
Wow.
In 1887 San Diego City Directory, he was listed as a capitalist or gambler. He won a racehorse named Otto Rex in a card game and began investing in racehorses. He also judged prize fights on both sides of the border. Yes, we know.
Right.
He was one of the judges at the county fair horse races held in Escondido, California, which happened in 1889. Well, that boom came to an end as rapidly as it had started, and the population of San Diego fell from a high of 40,000 in 1885 to only $16,000 in 1890 when Earp said, "I'm getting out of here."
Damn.
What the hell happened?
Damn, now it's huge.
Right. Well, is it? No.
Right. The Earps moved back to San Francisco in 1891. And Josephine could be closer to her half-sister Henrietta's family. And Earp developed a reputation as a sportsman and gambler, as we said before. He held on to his San Diego properties, but when their value fell, he could not pay the taxes, forced to sell. He continued to the horse races, but he could no longer afford to own any of them by 1896. So he raced them on behalf of the owner of a horse stable in Santa Rosa, which he managed. It works. In Santa Rosa, Earp personally competed in and won a harness race. Oh, man, nice. From 1891 to 1897, the couple lived in at least 4 different locations in that city of San Diego. 145 Ellis Street, 720 McAllister Street, 514A 7th Avenue, and 1004 Golden Gate Avenue, all in San Fran.
Apparently he goes to Yuma at some point, and while he's there, he heard of the gold rush in Alaska. Yukon. August 5th, 1897, Wyatt and Sadie, they left for San Fran. I guess they're going back to San Francisco. Earp was reported to have secured the backing of a syndicate of sporting men to open a gambling house there. They intended to catch a ship to Alaska, but their departure was delayed for 7 weeks when Wyatt fell while getting off Market Street streetcar and bruised or broke his hip.
Oh.
Damn. Sadie got pregnant as well, and she thought she could persuade Earp from heading to Alaska. He was in agreement, but Sadie, who was 37 years old, miscarried soon after. He's like, God damn.
All right.
They then finally boarded the steamship Rosalie, September 21st, 1897, and arrived in Dawson in the Yukon late September, where Wyatt planned to open a faro game.
Fantastic.
Wyatt and Josephine spent only a month in Dawson.
Then they returned north. He's on the move once again. Wyatt offered a job as the marshal in Wrangell, Alaska. But he served for only 10 days. Jeez, this guy. Sadie learned she was pregnant again.
I mean, you're in Alaska. All you're doing is fucking, probably.
All right, so they went back to San Francisco on 11th of October aboard the steamship City of Seattle. But guess what happened? Oh, Sadie miscarried that child once again. Earp spent the winter in Wrangell before setting out in the spring for Dawson on the board of the Governor Pingree via the Yukon River. Look at that guy. By that very time, they reached Rampart on the Yukon River. Freezing had set in. The Earps rented a cabin from Rex Beach for $100 a month. Spent the winter of 1898-1899 in Alaska on the Yukon.
1898, they got as far as Rampart before the Yukon River froze in place for the winter. Rampart was a friendly place, but far from the real action. They left with the spring thaw and headed for St. Michael on the Norton Sound, a major gateway to the Alaskan interior via the Yukon River. There, he managed a small store during the spring of 1899, selling beers, cigars for the Alaska Commercial Company. But Wyatt's friend Tex Ricard sent him a number of letters belittling Wyatt's steady but small income in St. Michael's chicken feed. Persuaded him to relocate to Nome. He said, "Come over here." This is where, that's where all the fishermen and shit go.
At the time of Earp's arrival, Nome was 2 blocks wide and 5 miles long. The best accommodations Wyatt and Sadie could find, it was just a wooden shack a few minutes from the main street, only slightly better than a tent. The river was an open sewer.
Ugh.
Typhoid, dysentery, pneumonia.
Dysentery.
Yep, they were all common. September, Earp and partner Charles E. Hoxie, they built the Dexter Saloon in Nome. The city's first 2-story wooden building and its largest and most luxurious saloon.
All right, they built it with fucking seal carcass.
Right. The second floor had 12 club rooms decorated with fine mirrors, thick carpets, draperies on the windows, and even sideboards.
Damn, sideboards? They fucking went all out. Well, trading on Earp's name, the Dexter was a success. I thought he wasn't popular.
Right.
It was used for a variety of purposes because it was so large. It's 70 by 30 feet with 12 feet ceilings. Earp used the club rooms upstairs as a brothel. Another fact that Sadie worked hard to see was omitted from stories about him.
Right.
Sadie justified the services upstairs because the Dexter was a better class saloon and served an important civic purpose. Right. The Dexter drew anyone famous who visited Nome. Wyatt rubbed elbows with future novelist Rex Beach, writer Jack London, playwright Wilson Misner, and boxing promoter Tex Ricard, with whom Earp developed a long-lasting relationship.
Fantastic.
Ricard was a partner in the Northern Saloon and Gambling House in Nome. Both the Dexter and Northern Saloon competed for business, with more than 60 other saloons in town, served an estimated 20,000 residents.
There's enough.
Right. Wyatt told others he made his money by mining the miners. Right. Oh. He was arrested twice in Nome for minor offenses, including being drunk and disorderly, although he was not tried. Most members of law enforcement were corrupt or otherwise engaged.
Right. Wow. All right. November 1899. Earp, he said, Alaska, I'm out. We did that on the 258-foot iron steamer, the Cleveland. The ship was infested with lice.
the Cleveland steamer.
Right. The ship was infested with lice and was struck by a storm on the Bering Sea, making for a difficult trip. It took 9 days to reach Seattle. Damn. July 6, 1900. Wyatt's bro shot and murdered in his saloon in Wilcox, Arizona. Damn it. Wyatt learned about his death soon after, and although some modern researchers believe he went to Arizona to avenge his brother's death, the distance and time required make the trip unlikely, and no contemporary evidence has ever been found to support that theory. He's too old. 2018, archivist at the Alaska State Library digitized a collection of documents related to Earp's arrival and stay in Alaska. Look at these guys.
All right. Earp arrived in Seattle with a plan to open a saloon and gambling room. Just stay in one spot. November 25th, 1899, the Seattle Star described him as a man of great reputation among the toughs and criminals, inasmuch as he formerly walked the streets of a rough frontier mining town with big pistols stuck in his belt, spurs on his boots, and a devil-may-care expression upon his official face. The Seattle Daily Times was less full of praise, announcing in a very small article that he had a reputation in Arizona as a bad man, in which that era was synonymous with villain and desperado.
It's true. He then faced considerable opposition to his plan from John Considine, who controlled all three gaming operations in town. Although gambling was illegal, Considine had worked out an agreement with the police chief C.S. Reed. Earp partnered with an established local gambler named Thomas Ugahart, and they opened the Union Club saloon and gambling operation in Seattle's Pioneer Square. The Seattle Star, they noted 2 weeks later, Earp's saloon was earning a large following. Considine unsuccessfully tried to intimidate Earp, but his saloon continued to prosper. After the city failed to act, 23rd of March, 1900, Washington State Attorney General filed charges against several gamblers, including Earp and his partner. The club's furnishings were confiscated and burned.
Yeah, burn them. Sell them. Earps returned briefly to San Francisco, April 1900. When was the earthquake? 1901? But then soon continued on to Seattle. Newspapers in Seattle and San Francisco falsely reported on Wyatt's wealth, which prompted a stampede to Nome to seek similar riches. Nome was advertised as an exotic summer destination, I guess. Right. And 4 ship today left Seattle with passengers infected with gold fever.
Ooh-wee.
June 14th, 1900, Wyatt and Sadie boarded the steamer SS Alliance in Seattle, bound for Nome. They brought many luxurious accessories with them to decorate the Dexter. Within weeks, Nome had grown to a city of over 20,000. Yeah. In 1900, the major business there was not mining, but gambling and saloon trade. There were 100 saloons and gambling houses with an occasional restaurant. Losses of 10 grand per hand in poker were not extraordinary. Prize fighting became the sport of choice, and Wyatt's income soared with side bet. He often refereed bouts himself at the Dexter. Oh, yeah, that. Good for you. Oh, geez, Sadie.
Wow, November 1901, age 40, Sadie, pregnant again. She and Wyatt decided to leave Alaska once again. They sold their interest in the Dexter to their partner, Charlie Hoxie. Wyatt and Sadie left Alaska on board the SS Roanoke and arrived in L.A. at the Hollenbeck Hotel on December 13, 1901. They had an estimated $80,000 in cash, a relative fortune which is equivalent to $2.5 million today. Sadie, guess...
Why is he out here chasing shit? Just settle down, dude.
Right. Well, Sadie miscarried again.
Jeez.
3 months later, February 1902, they arrived in Tonopah, Nevada, known as the Queen of the Silver Camps. This is where silver and gold had been discovered in 1900, and a boom was underway. Wyatt and Sadie opened a northern saloon in Tonopah, and he served as a deputy U.S. Marshal under Marshal J.F. Emmett. His saloon, oil, and copper mining interests produced some income for a period. You don't even need to do anything. Holy shit.
After Tonopah's gold strike waned, the move in 1905 to Goldfield, Nevada, where his brother Virgil and his wife were living.
Is he going to stay?
Tex Ricard was also already there, had opened a second northern saloon. He then hired Wyatt as a pit boss. Wyatt also staked mining claims just outside Death Valley and elsewhere in the Mojave Desert. In 1906, he discovered several deposits of gold and copper near the Sonoran Desert. That was near the town of Vidal, California, on the Colorado River, and filed more than 100 mining claims near the Whipple Mountains.
Oh.
While in L.A., they lived in at least 9 small L.A. rentals as early as 1885, and as late as 1929. It was a little summer getaway.
This dude is just a traveler, man. Holy shit. Dude. 1910.
Probably wasted... He's 62 in 1910. Right. He probably wasted 20 years traveling.
You ain't kidding. 1910. 62-year-old Wyatt. L.A. Police Department hired Wyatt and a former L.A. detective, Arthur Moore King. $10 a day to carry out various tasks outside the law, such as retrieving criminals from Mexico,
All right.
which did very capably.
I said outside the law. I guess you can't go into another country.
Wyatt excelled in that job. This led to Wyatt's final armed confrontation, October 1910. He was asked by former L.A. Police Commissioner H.L. Lewis to head up a posse to protect surveyors of the American Trona Company, who were attempting to arrest control of mining claims from vast deposits of potash on the edge of the Searles Lake, held in receivership by the foreclosed California Trona Company.
Potash. Wyatt and the group he guarded were regarded as claim jumpers and were confronted by armed representatives of the other company. King wrote, nerviest thing he had ever seen. With guns pulled, Wyatt came out of his tent with a Winchester, fighting around at the feet of Federal Receiver Stafford W. Austin. Back off or I'll blow you apart, or my name is not Wyatt Earp. He's such a douchebag. The owners summoned the U.S. Marshal, who arrested Earp and 27 others, served them with summons for contempt of court, and sent him home. Earp's actions did not resolve the dispute, which eventually escalated into the Potash Wars of the Mojave Desert. July 23, 1911, he was arrested in L.A. and charged with attempting to fleece J.Y. Peterson, who was a realty broker in a fake faro game. Since money had not changed hands, the charge against Earp was reduced to vagrancy, and he was released on $500 bail.
Damn. All right. Well, then Wyatt, he was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a small cottage in Vidal. The only home they ever owned.
That's a lie.
Beginning in 1911 until Wyatt's health began to fail in 1928, Wyatt and Sadie, they summered in L.A. and spent the rest of the year in the desert working their claims. The Happy Days mine was located in Whipple Mountains, a few miles north of Vidal. Wyatt had some modest success with the Happy Days gold mine, and they lived on the slim proceeds of income from that and the oil wells in Oakland and Kern County. What, he spent $2.5 million already? Holy shit.
Dude fucking travels more than fucking flight attendant. In about 1923, Charles Welsh, a retired railroad engineer and friend that Earp had known since Dodge City, he frequently invited the Earps to visit his family in San Bernardino. When the Welsh family moved to L.A., the Earps accepted an invitation to stay with them for a while in their top-floor apartment until the Earps found a place to rent. After Earp and Sadie moved into a bungalow nearby, Charlie Welsh's daughter, Grace, recalled that Sadie, who had never had many domestic skills, did very little housekeeping or cooking for Wyatt. She and her sister, Alma, were concerned about the care Sadie gave Wyatt. Though he was at times very ill, she still did not cook for him. Well, Grace, her sisters, and her mother brought in meals.
While living in L.A., Earp became an unpaid film consultant for several silent cowboy movies. 1915, Earp visited the set of director Alan Dwan's movie, The Half-Breed, starring Douglas Fairbanks. In his autobiography, Dwan recalled, as was the custom in those days, Earp was invited to join the party and mingle with our background action. Oh, cool. Earp became good friends with William Hart, and later Tom Mix, the most famous movie cowboys of that era. Hart was a stickler for realism in his depictions of Western life and may have relied on Earp for advice.
What's he there for?
Right. Earp later frequently visited the sets of movie director John Ford, whose movies starred Harry Carey. Ford's son, Patrick, he later wrote, my dad, he was real friendly with Wyatt Earp, and as a little boy, I remember him.
Okay, thinking about you, fucking Patrick. 1916, Earp went with his friend Jack London, whom he knew from Nome, to visit the set of former cowboy, sailor, and movie actor turned film director Raoul Walsh. He was shooting at the studio of Mutual Film Conglomerate in Ellendale, California. Walsh took the two men to dinner at Al Levy's Cafe on Main and 3rd. During the meal, the highest paid entertainer in the world, Charlie Chaplin, he dropped by to greet Wyatt Earp. Chaplin was impressed by both men, but particularly the former Tombstone Marshal.
All right.
Was he silent?
The first mime. Early 1920s, Earp was given the honorary title of Deputy Sheriff in San Bernardino, which is in California. 25th of January, 1926, Wyatt's only surviving brother, James, died of cerebral apoplexy. Earp, he tried to persuade his good friend, well-known cowboy movie star William Hart.
Okay, we don't need his fucking credentials every single time.
He's like, can you please set the...
I'm well-known cowboy movie star William Hart.
He's like, can you please help set the record straight about my life and get a movie made? If the story were exploited on the screen by you, he wrote Hart, it would do so much toward setting me right before the public, which has always been fed lies about me. Hart encouraged Earp to first find an author to pen his story. So you write that story, I will say it.
Well, in 1925, Earp began to collaborate on a biography with his friend and former mining engineer John Flood to get his story told in a way that he approved.
Right.
So you're not doing it justice. Flood volunteered his time and attempted to write an authorized biography of Earp's life based on Earp's recollection. And the two men sat together every Sunday in the kitchen of Earp's modest rented bungalow. While Wyatt sipped a drink and smoked a cigar, they tried to tell Earp's story. But Josephine was always present. She often interrupted and insisted, "You can't write that. It needs to be clean." She also demanded that they add more pep to the manuscript, which in her mind meant including the word crack in all capitals.
Damn.
In the chapter about the shootout, the manuscript includes 109 uses of crack.
Oh, wow.
She thought Earp needed to be shown as a hero, and the manuscript includes a chapter titled Conflagration, in which Earp saves 2 women, one a cripple, from a tombstone fire.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it just had to sweeten it up with a sprinkle a little cripple on top.
All right. Flood's writing was stilted, corny, and one-dimensional. The manuscript, completed sometime early in 1926, never found a publisher. February 1927, editor Ann Johnson of Bob's Merrill
Boobs barrel.
wrote back and was highly critical of the stilted, florid, and diffuse writing. She wrote, "Now one forgets what it's all about in the clutter of unimportant details that impedes its pace and the pompous manner of its telling." She's pissed. Spolidora,
Grace.
as a teenager, had visited the Earps many times near her family home in Needles, California. She sometimes sent to San Diego with them.
Oh, wow.
Well, in an interview with the San Bernardino Historical Society in 1990, she attributed to the highly exaggerated stories about Wyatt Earp to Josephine. Josephine would always interfere when Wyatt would talk with Stuart Lake. She always interfered. She wanted him to look like a church-going saint and blow things up. Wyatt didn't want that at all.
He's probably just getting her to shut up, like whatever.
Right.
Well, Hart tried to help. February 1926, he wrote the Saturday Evening Post, encouraged him to publish Flood's biography so that the rising generation may know the real from the unreal.
All right.
But Flood was a horrendous writer, and publisher after publisher rejected the manuscript.
Oh.
Several copies were made and sold in 1981. An original carbon copy of the typed manuscript, which was found among Josephine's papers, was given by Glenn Boyer to the Ford County Historical Society.
Fantastic. Good for him, right? It's like The Room, right? The worst movie ever made.
Right, and then turns into a cult.
Wyatt Earp was the last surviving Earp brother and the last surviving participant of the gunfight at the OK Corral when he died at his home in the Earp small rented bungalow at 4004 West 17th
We
Street.
want to make sure everybody knows that he had a small rented bungalow
Right.
in Los Angeles.
You're right. He died of chronic cystitis on January 13th, 1929, the age of 80. The LA Times reported that he had been ill with liver disease for 3 years. His brother Newton had died almost a month prior on the 18th of December, 1928. Wyatt, survived by Josephine and sister Adelia Earp Edwards. He had no children. Well, he tried. Charlie Welsh's daughter, Grace Polidora, and his daughter-in-law, Elma, were the only witnesses to Wyatt's body cremation. Josephine was apparently too grief-stricken to assist.
The funeral was held at the Congregational Church on Wilshire Boulevard. Earp's pallbearers were William Hunsaker, which is Earp's attorney in Tombstone and noted LA attorney, Jim Mitchell from the LA Examiner, and a Hollywood screenwriter.
Okay.
George Parsons, founding member of Tombstone's Committee of Vigilance. Wilson Misner, a friend of Wyatt's during the Klondike Gold Rush.
Fantastic.
John Clume, a good friend from his days in Tombstone.
Wow.
He was a former Tombstone mayor and editor of the Tombstone Epitaph.
Oh.
William Hart, we know him. He was a Western actor, and he was a good friend and a well-known Western actor and silent film star. Tom Mix was the same. And Mitchell, he wrote Wyatt's local obituary.
Oh.
The newspapers reported that Tom Mix cried during his friend's service. Josephine did not attend Wyatt's funeral. Grace was furious. She didn't go to his funeral even. She wasn't even that upset. She was peculiar. I don't think she was that devastated when he died.
Ooh.
Damn.
Josephine, she was Jewish, had Earp's body cremated and secretly buried his remains in the Marcus family plot
Oh, that's not loud.
at the hills of the Eternity Memorial Park, a Jewish cemetery in Colma, California.
Don't you have to be Jew?
I think so. When she died in 1944, her body was buried alongside his ashes. She had purchased a small white marble headstone, which was stolen shortly after her death in 1944. Assholes, dude. It was discovered in a backyard in Fresno. A second stone of flat granite was also stolen. You piece of shits.
It's just in a backyard. July 7th, 1957, grave robbers dug into the Earp's grave in an apparent attempt to steal the urn containing his ashes. Unable to find his cremains, they stole the 300-pound gravestone instead. Actor Hugh O'Brien, who was playing Earp in the 55-61 television series The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp, he offered a reward for the stone's return. It was then located for sale in a flea market.
Son of a bitch. Leave the guy alone. Holy Cemetery officials reset the stone flush in concrete. but it was stolen again. Actor Kevin Costner stole it. Actor Kevin Costner, who played Earp in the 1994 movie Wyatt Earp, he's like, you know what? I'm going to buy a larger stone. But the Marcus family thought that his offer was self-serving and declined. Wow, what a piece of shit.
Why would it be self-serving?
Descendants of Josie's half-sister Rebecca allowed a Southern California group in 1998. He's like, can we erect the stone currently in place? Sure. The earlier stone is on display in the Colma Historical Museum. And since 1998, the new erected stone has not been touched.
In 1957, the Tombstone Restoration Commission looked for Wyatt's ashes with the intention of having them relocated to Tombstone.
Wow.
They contacted family members seeking permission and the location of his ashes, but no one could tell them where they were buried, not even his closest living relative, George Earp.
Oh, wow.
Arthur King, a deputy to Earp from 1910 to 12, finally revealed that old Sadie had buried Wyatt's ashes in Colma, California, and the Tombstone Commission canceled its plans to relocate them. Huh. Their gravesite is the most visited resting place in the Jewish cemetery.
Fantastic. Not even a Jew. Wow. Right. Josephine wrote in her memoir that she and Earp, they were married in 1892 by the captain of multimillionaire Lucky Baldwin's yacht. They did that off the coast of California. Raymond Nez, he wrote that his grandparents witnessed this marriage, but no public record is be found of the marriage or that there's Raymond Nez's grandparents were there.
Captains are allowed to.
Right. In maritime law or some shit. Baldwin was a horse breeder.
You're a captain. You have.
Right.
As long as you're at sea or some shit.
Right. Married at sea.
People, yeah.
Baldwin was a horse breeder and a racer who also owned the Santa Anita racetrack in L.A., which Earp frequented.
Earp's relationship with Josephine was tempestuous at times. She gambled to excess. Well, so did he. And he had adulterous affairs. He knew that she preferred Josephine and detested Sadie, but he had a mischievous sense of humor and began calling her Sadie earlier in the relationship. Earp's good friends in the Welsh family did not appreciate Josephine's gambling habit, and they noted that she received an allowance from her half-sister Rebecca and gambled it away, often leaving her husband hungry.
Wow. In the 1920s, Earp gave Josephine signed legal papers and filing fees to claim for an oil lease in Kern County. She gambled away the filing fees and lied to him about what happened to the lease, which later turned out to be very, very valuable. He distrusted her ability to manage her finances and made an arrangement with her sister Henrietta. He put oil leases in Henrietta's name with the agreement that the proceeds would benefit Josephine after he died. February 1926, the oil well was completed and producing 150 barrels a day, but Henrietta's 3 children refused to keep the agreement after their mother's death and kept the royalties to themselves. Josephine sued her sister's estate in an attempt to collect the royalties.
A lot of money. 150 barrels a day? Josephine later developed a reputation as a shrew who made life difficult for her. She frequently griped about his lack of work and financial success. He had $2.4 million equivalent, and even his character and personality, and he often went on long walks to get away from her. He was furious about her gambling habit, during which she lost considerable sum. Each may have engaged in extramarital affairs. Josephine could also be controlling, and a relative of Wyatt joked that nobody could convict him of cold-blooded murder because he had lived with her for almost 50 years. He ain't killed that bitch yet.
Damn. At the time of his death, Earp may have been more well-known for the controversy that engulfed him after the Fitzsimmons-Sharkey fight than the OK Corral. His Associated Press obituary gave prominent attention to his officiating of the Fitzsimmons-Sharkey fight, while describing him as a gunfighter whose blazing six-shooters were the most of his life, allied with the side of law and order.
Oh, good for you guys. Right. In its January 14th, 1929 obituary, the L.A. Times, they wrote a fictional account of Earp taming Colton, California. As Deputy United States Marshal, Earp had been sent from town to town to quell disturbances and establish peace. His only recorded visit to California in those days was his memorable trip to Colton, which was then known as the toughest town untamed. Within a week, Wyatt Earp had the town running like a clock, but at the cost of not a few lives of prominent citizens.
What are you going to do?
Earp could shoot with his 2 guns from all angles and instantly made his presence felt in Colton. Long after his death, he has many devoted detractors and admirers.
Fantastic. Well, Earp's modern-day reputation is that of an Old West, toughest, deadliest gunman of his day. Yet he is a cultural icon, a man of law and order, a mythic figure of a West where social control and order was notably absent. Due to Lake's fanciful biography, and because Wyatt outlived all of his bros, his name became famous, and he is the primary figure in many movies, television shows, biographies, and works of fiction.
Western historian and author John Bossenecker He describes Earp. He was an enigmatic figure. He always lived on the outer fringe of respectable society, and his closest companions were gamblers and sporting men. Wyatt never set down roots in any one place. When the money stopped coming in or his problems became too great, he'd pull up the stakes and move on to the next boomtown. For his entire life was a gamble, an effort to make money without working hard for it, to succeed quickly without ever settling in for the long haul.
That's Wyatt.
That's Wyatt.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere.
That is Wyatt for you.
Well, he did it.
He fucking did it.
He got his Vendetta Ride done, accomplished, and then
Killed a bunch of people. You know, what more can you ask in life?
and then tarnished his legacy with a bunch of cheating and
Right, being a dumbass.
Wow.
A money-hungry fool.
like hungry bitch.
That's the Wyatt Earp story. Next week, or next month, on Remastered, we'll be moving into a different era of time known as the Prohibition era of the old United States. I don't know why we started off with Al Capone on this. I guess he was a kind of a bootlegger guy, but
Right.
we'll be moving on to Al Capone for our next Remastered episode, and then a bunch of Prohibition guys.
Syphilis boy himself.
Syphilis boy himself. Old tax evader non.
Oh.
But next week, we'll be going into another serial killers. I don't know who that's going to be yet, but you'll see it when it comes. With that, subscribe, share with friends, all that good stuff. We'll see you next week for some murdering. Mouth Michiganers with.